Welcome to Mama's Planted, the podcast where we dig deep, get rooted in Christ, and grow together through all seasons of motherhood. I'm Vanessa, your host, and I'm so excited you're here. Whether you're a new mom, expecting, or caring for little ones, this is your safe space to laugh, cry, and thrive. Each episode will dive into the challenges and joys of raising tiny humans. So grab your coffee, throw on your mom bun, and let's walk this journey together with grace, faith, and a whole lot of fun. Welcome to another episode of Mama's Planted. I'm grateful that you decided to join this conversation today. We are going to be talking about having those tough conversations with your kids, specifically teens, but really all ages as well. And today I'm joined by Amy Sableski. She is a wife and mom to 5 kids, and we actually served alongside of each other way back in the day. We were just talking about on our youth team. We were serving at the same church together, and I actually met her a little bit prior to that as well when I was a student. And that was such a fun time. And then to be able to serve alongside of each other and now be on this podcast together, talking about our family, it's a full circle moment. So I'm so happy to have Amy here today.
Yeah, thank you so much for letting me be on here.
Of course.
I've watched your other podcasts and you have like the greats on here, like some amazing women. So I'm like, what? Like she wants me. So I'm super honored for you to have me on here. But man, can I just tell you, like, I'm so like proud of who you are and you're doing this. It's so amazing. So
thank you, Amy,
good job.
so much. That means a lot coming from you.
Super cool. I don't want to cry right off the bat, but I'm so proud of you.
I know. Don't make me cry just yet. We just started. Something that we were talking about off camera that I already want to really get into with you is we're kind of talking about having these tough conversations with our kids and what that kind of looks like. And really what I want to know is, where does that relationship really start?
Yeah. Yes, we're just jumping in. So I think that it starts, if you want to have conversations with your teens, it starts when they're a baby, like just being, okay, so I don't know what works for everybody, but what worked for me is I just wanted to give them opportunities to be able to talk with me. I'm not a good listener, and I have to work at that and try really hard to do that. So I was a back rubber. Like before they would go to sleep, we would always have family prayer, and then I would rub their bellies, their backs, my daughter, her arms, her legs, like she would like here and here, But and sometimes, you really just want them to go to bed. You just want them to go to sleep, let's be honest. But during those times, I would make up like the craziest stories, and we would just laugh a lot. But there are a lot of times it would get quiet, and that's when they would tell me like what happened at school that day, or some kid that was being mean to them, or that's when they would open up, and you're just like, oh my goodness, like I'm glad I went that little extra minute to hear this, because when they're playing, when they're super busy, when they're doing all the things, you just, or with me, I'm cooking, you're cooking, you're cleaning, you're doing laundry. You just don't have time a lot of time to just stop. And those times I knew I wasn't a good listener. So me creating those times when they were little to just do that. And I found that doing that when they were little, like I just kept doing it. Like even when they were in middle school, they wanted me to rub their back. I'm like, hey, when we rub your back, and they're like, yeah, like whatever. And so I would just be able to hang out, with them in their rooms or whatever. I would still pray over them at night before they went to sleep, and we did that a lot, just praying over that night. But and then just even when they were a teen, sometimes I would just come in and just sit on their bed. Or sometimes I'd run and just jump on their bed and just lay on them and just be like, I have not spent any time with you. Like, but building those foundations of me being in their room and rubbing their backs, just that alone was so huge, I think, in building my foundation with them as a teen, of allowing me to be in their room and just being comfortable with them opening up at night or whenever, just having that space for me to be able to listen and for them to just be able to open up. That was kind of one of the things. Another thing that we did, we just never allowed TV or video games in their rooms. And that was just a huge thing. Like, we watched TV as a family. We just never, that was just a huge rule. And, there were some pushbacks when they were teens. You're like, everybody else has one. Like, well, we don't really care. We're not everybody else.
Right.
So. But it made us like watch TV together, and I have to say, me and Aaliyah have watched plenty of guy stuff, because of that, but yeah, it created us. It made them get out of the rooms and not like want to really like. I've seen kids like they love to just be in their rooms, and I didn't want that. Like, I wanted us to be together as much as we could. And I don't know, a lady years ago had told me, like, oh, especially when they get in trouble. I guess it was more like when they were in trouble or whatever. But never send your kids to their room like in timeout, which I mean, I'm not saying never is like a very strong word, but when they're alone, especially after they get in trouble, like when they're alone, they're able, like Satan's able to talk to them, So like I remember going to my room, like my parents hate me, like just thinking all these things. I'm like, no, like if they're going to be in timeout, they're going to sit at the table and like, do something there or whatever. But it's a time like when they're in trouble, I'm not going to associate what they did with how much I love them. So after they've gotten punished or whatever, that's when I'm like, hey, I still love you though. Like, hey, after like later, let's go get ice cream or whatever, Yeah. So anyways, just creating that space, for them starts when they are itty bitty, rubbing their backs or what, it doesn't have to look like that. Just because I went and rubbed my kids' backs, doesn't mean like the next mom has to go do that. But whatever works for them, but just being intentional of that time and creating the space while they're little. So it just becomes natural to them to want to just open up and share with you,
I love that so much because I feel like most of what you're saying right now is, as parents, right, you have to be intentional with your kids from the very beginning. And it's so important because I do feel like you have created that space with your family right now to have those open and honest and vulnerable conversations with you. And it started way back when they were little.
Yeah.
So that's awesome that you are intentional, but you were also consistent through all of that as well, because I'm sure that there were seasons, there were moments where maybe you just wanted to be like, just go to your room. It would be easier almost to send them off. Right.
There's times when it's just easier to do the things like that, especially for me, not being a good listener. I could just be like, well, that's just not me. I'm not a good listener. But no, like, and there's been times my kids have said things and I'm just like, I have not heard a thing they have said. They're saying it to my face and I'm not listening. And I just have to say, hey, I'm sorry. Like, I really want to hear what you're saying, but I struggle with listening. Like, please help me. Like, can you back the truck up and say this to me again so I can really listen to you? So I've had some humbling experiences too. I've been like, man, or sometimes I'm like, hey, anytime that you feel like I'm not listening, call me out. Like I want to listen. It is not in my nature, but it is my will and my desire to want to hear you. So whenever you feel like I'm not listening, like call me out. Like I'll be quick to apologize and tell me, and be able to listen. So
it's good that you're aware of that. And then you make your kids aware of that as well, right? Because that can be pretty hard because it's a weakness of yours that you're not a good listener, but at least they know that and they can be like, Mom, you didn't hear what I just said. I'm so sorry. Let's try that again. Yeah. Creating that open and honest space.
I think that's a good thing too. Yeah. Like for your kids to know your weaknesses, like we have just been a family that laughs. Like there's just a lot of joy and we laugh at our weaknesses. We're just like, yep, like there goes Mom. Like whatever, like I think when you can laugh at your weaknesses, you can, deal with them so much better and just be able to, move forward from like, it's not I'm weak in that. It's not a big deal. Like,
right.
Whatever.
Right. Well, with me having two younger boys, I really want to
Mm.
know because you have four boys and then one girl.
Yeah.
So, what advice would you kind of have for a mom like me that wants to raise strong men?
Yeah. I personally, it's so tough because don't judge me, you guys. I think it's okay to let them get hurt. Like, I don't know. I think we just protect our kids way too much. And, um, I mean, I've heard people say, bring back bullying. I'm not all that extreme, but, allowing them, uh, to be able to be adventurous and there's a book, I think it's even called Wild at Heart, and it talks about
Yeah.
how boys have that adventurous spirit and we shouldn't stifle that, and one of the things that was really good for me was I got to be in the ministry with my husband doing Royal Rangers. That's after, I mean, it's before I went to the cool side of extreme. But it was really eye-opening in that situation, working with a bunch of men and all these boys. And here I am, like, oh my goodness. And but like they would play dodgeball, and the ball these men would just like peg these kids like a little harder than my heart would want them to be pegged,
Yeah.
And so there would, there'd be kids like they would fall down, and I'm like, my intent would just be to go like, oh, come here. And they would be like, boy, get up. You're fine. And I'd be like, oh, but I noticed that like God, that's why God made both the mom and the dad, because they need us to be the soft one, or one of us to be the soft one, that to love on them and to be gentle. But man, they need that dad to be able to like get up, when times are tough, get up. You can rise above this, those kind of things. And then like, I let my kids, even Aaliyah, like I let them do things. Like I was the mom that would get in trouble for, like I had, Zach, he was my crazy child. I have a picture somewhere with him. There was a season he literally thought he was Spider-Man, and I would be like, "You're not Spider-Man."
That is adorable,
And he'd be
though.
like, "Yes, I am, Mom." I'm like, "No, you're not." You're like, "I can climb walls." I'm like, "I know." But so he would like shuffle himself up. I mean, he was pretty young. Shuffle himself up on
Mhm.
down the hall, and he would be way up high. And so one time my friend came over, and all of a sudden I see her face. She's like, and I turn around and he's butt naked. He's just up on the wall. Just butt naked. So anyways.
I'm sure that Zach loves that you just told that story.
He's gonna love it. No, but so he was my climber, and he liked to climb on the outside. When we were at the playgrounds, he liked to climb on the outside of all the playground equipment. Well, that is not allowed apparently at the playground, because moms would be like, I had a mom look at me and she was like, we don't allow our kids to climb on the outside of the slide. And I was like, I'm sorry, but my kid's really good at it. Like, I'm gonna let him. So like my other son, Jared was not good at climbing. Sorry, Jared, you weren't. But so I kind of wouldn't let him do it as much. But knowing their ability and letting them do it. Another instance it was always Zach, and he knows this, but Zach wore Heelys. Remember the Heelys? Yeah.
Yes.
I think Gio had some
He
too. I
did,
think
and
they all.
they were like riding around together in their
Yes.
Heelys.
I was literally talking about him last night because Zach rode across when he graduated, he rode across the stage with his Heelys.
I feel like
So bad.
Gio did that too.
Maybe, probably.
Wow.
Probably. But anyways, I think when Zach was in like the 5th grade, we were at Austin's football game, and he rolled down, the bleachers, they sometimes have a ramp. Well, he rolled down the ramp, and he just broke his arm so bad. Out in St. Cloud, we had to rush to the hospital there. the thing I got the most was like, well, I bet you're going to put those things away.
Right.
And I was like, no. Like as soon as he gets better, he can get back on them, because that's what we do in life. We get back up and we do it again. We just do it better.
Yeah.
And so I just think things like that, like allowing them to do things. Like what is, to me, I don't know, like what is life worth living if you can't live it? So live it to the fullest and not afraid. Like, of course, be on the safe side a little, maybe, but I don't know. I've just allowed my boys to be full boys. And I've always told them though, like, hey, but there are consequences and you
Right.
have to choose, if the consequence is worth it or not. Sometimes it's worth it, sometimes it's not.
Right.
So, as long as it's, according to the Lord, like, as long as you're not disrespecting anybody, whatever, like do it, I've always just kind of been like a do it mom. And it's, I think, and now allowing them to be adventurous, throw rocks and climb trees. And I think that builds good guys.
So what I'm gathering from everything that you're saying is that you're allowing this in the physical sense, but it also carries over into the spiritual sense as well, for them to be able to have, you're already starting the conversation, for them to be able to have that conversation with you. You're like, hey, yeah, go ahead and live your life, but there are consequences. So remember that. Is what
Yeah.
you're about to do right now worth it?
Yeah.
For the consequence.
Yeah.
And that's a conversation that you're having with them about something as silly as riding around in Heelys, but then you're kind of having the same conversation with them when they approach you about something.
Right.
So I think that's so important what you're saying. And it honestly is a wake-up call to me too, because as moms, we are just very nurturing and we want to go ahead and, no, it's okay, come here, I'll give you a hug or whatever. And it's just like, no, just be a boy, rub some dirt on it, go again, try again.
Yeah. And I feel like society is so mean to moms now, like if you put anything on the internet, you're going to get bashed, or whatever. And so I think moms now are just really afraid to mother how they feel in their heart to do, instead of mothering like, this person, how they're mothering or whatever. I've always, as a mom, have tried to put like blinders, like I'm visual. So I really, the horse that has like the blinders on there.
Yeah.
I've always had that vision of a mom that like, Amy, just keep your eyes on Jesus. Don't look to like what Miss Perfect Sue over here looks like or whatever, and or what they say I should be doing. Help me to mother the way you want me to mother my kids that you gave me. And so that's going to look different than how you mother your kids the way God wants you to mother your kids. And so, you can be, it's free when you live like that. It's free. And well, if you can like drown out like all the noises of like, you're not doing this right, but it's freedom in Christ, really, just knowing that God made you for your kids and, you're going to be in that freely. So
I truly believe that that's one of the areas that the Lord was talking about when he says to live your life to the fullest. Like that's one of the promises that he has for us, is to just live our life, and we're going to have boundaries, but there's also going to be consequences to that as well. But to just live your life to the fullest, however you can, being a boy, being a girl, whatever that looks like. And it is going to look different for every parent.
Yeah. Right.
So that's a great reminder, and it's a great prayer to pray on a daily basis.
Yeah.
What does this look like for me and my household? How should I be raising my kids?
Yeah.
Or not just me, but me and my husband, me and my spouse.
Right.
How should
how do you want me to mother the kids you gave me? Yeah, because it looks different.
Yeah.
It can look different. Yeah.
Because every kid is unique.
Yeah. And we're unique and we have different, likes and dislikes and things like that. So yeah, it looks still a little different.
One of the things that I know, and I know this because we met in church, obviously, but one of the things that I know is that you would have your kids with you at church, right? So how can the church community become a place where our kids feel comfortable asking questions about tough subjects.
Yeah. So I don't want to go off subject, but one of the greatest pictures I have of my kids, I think Jamie Wilson sent it to me, but it's at the old church. And it might have been a fine arts night. I'm not sure why, because the youth was in there. So Levi is front and center, and he has his legs like all laid out, and he's just like laying like this in the front, like he's at home. And I was like, man, she sent that to me, and I was like, man, this is how I want my kids to feel at the church, is where this is their second home, like it just was, that picture has always stood out to me, where I want my kids to feel that way. I want students that come in to feel that way. And so what was your question? Sorry.
No, I mean, I think
besides
the church community.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so how can we be a church community? Yeah, I think that, for one, if we are the church, if you're talking about like Christians in general, the church needs to be at home first. And I'm sorry I'm bringing it at home, but man, we cannot depend on the church building to be our church as a family. Like,
right.
So many times parents are like, well, how come the church isn't talking about this subject? And how come they're not talking about that subject? Well, you need to talk about it at home. Like, I want my kids to talk about it at home, maybe before or more than they talk about at church. So if we're talking about as us raising our children as Christians, those subjects, like, we just need to see that we are the church. And so that church doesn't leave those buildings and we're done. We're at home either backing up what they say, or we are having church at home. Like, sitting down and praying with your kids, or talking about tough subjects with your kids. I'm a giggler when it comes to like talking about funny things, like the private things, and I'm like the most immature person. I'm just going to say that, but you got to do it. Like, even, and sometimes you just be like, listen, I know this is like really awkward, but you need to know this. And so we're going to talk about it. Okay. So like, and we just get over it and laugh, like, again, laugh about my weakness, but yeah, so we, our tough subjects need to come from home. But I think if we're also leaders at church and we want, people from the outside to come into church too, I think there's just got to be, our standards have to be high, but grace has to be higher, and just allow people to come in and feel the love and the grace that will show them, while also looking like Jesus instead of the world, I just read this book. It was saying something about when people come into the church, it should look like they're looking into a window of the kingdom of heaven. And that is like,
I love that.
Oh my goodness. That is just so beautiful. Let that be said when people come into my home, and let that be said when they look in the church that I attend or that I serve in. It's just so beautiful. It should look like the kingdom and not at all like the world,
When I think about the church community playing a role in our kids' life, I think about how first I do want it to start at home, right? Just like you're saying. And when I think about that, I'm thinking about us planting those seeds at home. But then when they go to church, the church is watering it.
Yes.
It's an agreement. We're walking alongside of each other to raise, we're talking about our kids here, right? So to raise our own kids, I want to make sure that whatever church we're at, we are in agreement in the word of God. We are in agreement in our beliefs, because if we're having disagreement about certain things, then we need to talk about that too. We need to address it, and we need to have those conversations. And something that you and I were also talking about off camera too is that you have created that safe space for your kids at home. And so when they're at church, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like they do also feel like they have that safe space at church to connect with leaders and ask those tough questions that maybe they don't feel 100% comfortable, or maybe it just feels more awkward bringing this up to mom or dad. So let me see if I can ask a church leader. But
Yeah.
there's that trust there between you and the church.
Yeah. And this just made me remember something like one of the benefits of being a leader with students is, man, I just got front seat, experience with kids, and I could literally just ask them. Like, I remember I had a group of girls and I was like, they were like, yeah, I just can't talk to my mom. Like, she won't, she won't understand. These were Christian girls that were going around saying, I can't talk to my mom. Like, I just can't talk to her. And I just kind of was like, girls, like, why? Like, why can't you talk to your mom? Like, I'm a mom and I'm raising my kids and I want to know. And they were like, we just don't want everything to be a sermon. Like, I just want to talk to my mom sometimes and her just listen. And I was like, whoa, that's crazy. Okay. Like, so that really helped me with my kids. Like, okay, like I might know all the greatest Bible verses and I might know and there's times for that too. But there's times when our kids just need us to listen to them and not make a sermon. They just need to sort it out of their little brains,
Right.
And so they just need to listen. So that's a good tip. Like, don't make I was like, what is that all it is? Like, really? For my daughter to talk to me or my kids to talk to me, just don't make it a sermon. So I try not to.
Right.
You want to.
So while you're trying to create that safe and trusted place with your kids, should we as parents share with them about things that we struggled and overcame?
Yes, I 100% think so. But as they can handle it, and I've been open with my past. Like, I was raised in a Christian home, but I totally left Christ and lived a sinful lifestyle. And I was, my big fear was like, man, how do I raise kids that don't do that, But so I definitely wanted them to know my struggles, but I also wasn't gonna be like telling them everything that I did. So like when they're elementary school, I might tell them a little bit of things or whatever. You just try to use it age appropriately. And when they became then more in high school, I would just be like, listen, like I would tell them more. I don't think my kids will ever know the full things. If they want, they can I'm pretty open, but I just don't blab it. But I am willing, and I have shared with them, like, listen, like the best of us, like we're all vulnerable to sin, and we have to be grounded and come back to him if we do or whatever. My biggest thing with my kids was I wanted them to know is that, man, you do, like, there's so many Christians in high school or whatever too, that they struggle with thinking they have to be like that perfect Christian. And then they go off and they're like hiding their sins and stuff, and I'm like, what a shame. Like you're in like these fall renewals and things, and these kids are coming up and like, yeah, I struggled with this for so many years. And you're like, what? And I would, those are great opportunities to come home with my kids and be like, I don't want that to be you. Like, you don't have to hide your struggles. And that's when I would just kind of be like, I've struggled with these things and the Lord has brought me out of those things. He can, you too. But don't ever think, we wanted to make our home of there's no perfect here, and you can, this is a super safe place for you to tell us your struggles for things like that,
Yeah, I like the vulnerability that we have to continue to have with our kids. And just like you said, it does need to be age appropriate.
Yeah.
And I just believe that there needs to be wisdom in that as well. So before we enter a conversation with our kids, or maybe even a student, we need to first have ourselves in check. We need to pray, see if there's a direction that the Lord wants to take that conversation in, or maybe it is a conversation where we just listen.
Right. Well, a lot of times, like if they would decide to share and they just needed me to listen, then I'm going back behind the scenes and I'm praying. I am praying. And then later, you can use wisdom for God to kind of show you how to weave that back in when maybe the emotions aren't so high, or maybe, it's just a different time where you might even be able to present it where it's not even that, but just, you can relate it to their life or whatever.
Right.
Those are just good things, or just, not doing it then, but definitely coming back to that. Like you're on it, like you're praying. But I just love, like, throughout my life, I love that God says we can ask for wisdom anytime, and he so graciously gives it to us. And he's done that to me so many times.
I'm curious to know if in the most maybe difficult conversation that you've had with one of your kids, has there also been maybe consequence or discipline that you've had to act on top of that?
Yeah.
They're coming to you and they're being honest and they're being vulnerable, and we're, providing them with truth and grace and wisdom. But then at the same time, they did mess up in something.
Yeah.
That, not mess up, but they did sin in something that they're telling you. So then what does that discipline kind of look like?
So, we have still always applied discipline. I am a super fun, loving mama, and our home is full of joy, but my kids will tell you, I was a spanker. I used the belt. I had a whipping belt, a certain belt. There were times my kids definitely had to be disciplined in those things. Like there were times when they would mess up pretty bad, and we would, if they were serious and they were maybe a serious kind of sin or whatever, we would sit them down, talk to them, tell them what was wrong and why they shouldn't do that, and tell them that, like, we still love them. Like, that never changes. But our discipline, even, I think it kind of comes before that too. Like, even in the little disciplines, they know that I'm disciplining them to be a good human because I love them, because I want to steward them the right way. That's the way we teach them. That's what God does to us. He steers us the right way. He has to discipline in those ways. So then when we get to those tough times and there's a discipline applied, they've already know why it's there, but they also know that is separate. Like, my love for them is separate from the discipline that's applied. So we have had to, ground, or, my boys we've done it all. We've read all the books and all the ideas. My oldest kid, we would take his door off his room. He'd be like, Mom, remember you used to take my door off my room? I'm like, yes, I remember. It worked though, didn't it? You're a good human now, aren't you?
Right. You're like, yeah, privacy is a privilege.
Yes. Yeah. So there's some disciplines I'm proud of, that, not proud, but we've stewarded well. Mm-hmm. And there's some disciplines that, man, I've walked away and cried and been like, Lord, I don't know if I've done that right, but I pray that you'll turn that around for good, because I might have just screwed that up in there. I'm not sure. But man, I feel like, we have to do it. We have to discipline because we love them so much and we want them to be good humans, and ultimately go to heaven. Like, that's the ultimate prize, right?
And we have to do that as parents, because no one else is going to discipline our kids for us.
Yeah. A long time ago, I was sitting on the baseball bleachers, and it was a cop, and I asked her something about her spanking her kids. She goes, "Oh yeah, girl, if you don't discipline somebody else is going to do it." And I'm like, that is so true. If you're not going to discipline them, someone else is going to do it. Girl, I had me the perfect. Okay, you're probably not asking for this. I used to use paint stirrers are free, And I used to have one everywhere. Like, I would have one in my diaper bag. I would have one like I had an expedition, so they would kind of like be far back there. And so I would have one, and I'd just be like, and I would just be whipping all their legs.
You know what? It worked for your kids, because I look at your kids now and they're all strong kids.
Yeah, and
I mean,
they'll
they're
be
not
like,
even
"Mom,
kids.
they need a whipping." Like, yeah, they probably do, but yeah, like I always say, like if you do that when they're younger, I just don't think you have to do it as much when they're older. Like I grew up where my parents whipped a lot, so I was really afraid of that, and it doesn't even, I know this isn't the podcast about whipping, but we're talking about discipline.
Mhm.
And I was very afraid of that because I didn't want to get super angry or things like that. And then when I worked at a preschool, we couldn't, you can't touch those kids. So it was good for me because I learned how to discipline without having to spank. But to me, it's however you choose to discipline, it's, whether timeouts or whatever, like it's definitely necessary. Do it, be consistent, and, stay the course and keep on, because they will become, if you do it now when they're younger, it's not going to be as much when they're older.
Do you have any encouragement to offer to the parent who's listening today who is really trying to take in everything that we've said about having these tough conversations with their kids?
Yeah. Yes. Like, I know we've talked about like a lot of things we did like to do when they're little, like starting when they're little, but maybe there's a mom their kids are in middle school or high school and they're like, well, that's a little too late for me. But it's never too late. Like you can start just being, I think you can't do anything without having a relationship first. So when you start to work on truly having a relationship with your kids and being about what they're about, like for me, like, my kids love video games. They're video game freaks and they know. So if I want to spend time with them more, I just go sit by them, like sometimes I'll just sit by them and I'll like put my head on their, like Levi, I'll just put my head on, like, I just need some Levi time, but like, those are silly little things, but later it opens up a time. It might not open a time then, but building a relationship with him makes him trust me. And I think we talked about the church too, like building relationships with people in the church helps people to open up and have real conversations, knowing that there's no judgment and things like that. One of the things I was going to talk about before too is like, having like as a teen mom, middle school mom, whatever, like some of the best conversations we have had is in our truck, like just driving. And it's the greatest thing because, you're this way and you're not looking at each other. So like, it's not as awkward. And man, we've had some crazy, raw talks in there. I mean, I've talked to them about, girl things and all kinds of them. Like, okay, listen, I've got you guys cornered. Like, this is what we're going to talk about today. And sometimes like it can just be super awkward. It's awkward to me. It's not fun to talk about weird things, or like, things that, we don't always talk about. It's not hard. It's hard and difficult to talk about sex. It's hard to talk about porn. But when you, and those are issues, that we're all afraid about, but when we just talk about it, like, hey, this is a weird thing, but we just need to talk about this, like when they're older, like when they're in high school, thankfully you can just do that. Like, hey, we just need to have this talk, and just do it. But even though it does feel weird and awkward, you just do it and it's great. And so, just being about their world and, just making space for them, getting off of your devices, like I see so many parents just in their devices. And man, if TikTok likes you more than your kids like you, if you're getting more likes from them and you don't know about your kids, like turn it off, make them turn it off. Like get in there and play a goofy game, or whatever. Those are what's going to build moments for you to have conversations that is difficult to have, just building
Yes.
those relationships. Yeah.
Yes. My word of encouragement to moms or parents who are listening, who are just really struggling to find those moments or opportunities of having those tough conversations with your kids, is to keep going.
Yes.
Keep showing up.
100%. Yes.
Keep
Don't
being,
give up.
yes, keep being available for your kids,
Yeah.
because even though you may not have that conversation right now, you don't know what's going to happen 2 weeks from now, a month from now, a year from now.
Yeah.
Your kid might finally realize, wait, mom and dad have been there all along. I actually can approach them with this conversation. I can talk to them about this. And that's what we want. We want our kids to come to us with the hard things.
And don't freak out in front of them,
Yeah.
like freak out behind doors, like, oh my God, but just be calm and cool. Like when they're telling you, cry with them, laugh with them, but freak out with the Lord, don't freak out when they're telling you things. Because the Lord ultimately has your kids, and when you're giving the Lord your kids, like he's got them, and you can trust the Lord to, help you and give you wisdom. So to the mamas, I say too, like just stay in your word, stay praying, let your kids see you on your knees sometimes, just giving it to him, and, but they can do it, like stay strong in the Lord, stay strong in your church, and just, keep loving those babies. Just love them till it's just gross, till they're just like, if I'm going to err on my kids, just me loving them too much.
Yeah.
I'm just going to err on that side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you being here with me today on this podcast talking about this. I have to have you back. This was so
yes.
much fun.
Yes.
I appreciate all of your wisdom, all of your insight.
Thank you.
I hope my boys are just as strong and wise as I see all of your kids.
They will be.
Thank you for presenting us with a different perspective too on having the tough conversations and discipline and all of that fun stuff. So thank you, Amy,
thank you
so
much. Thank you for letting me be here.
Thank you so much for tuning in to our conversation today. If any of this blessed you, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share this episode with another friend who can benefit from this. Thank you guys, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining me today on the Mamas Planted podcast. I hope you found a little inspiration to help you grow in your motherhood journey. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend and help us spread the word. And don't forget to follow us on social media for encouragement and updates. You can find us on Instagram at Mamas Planted. Until next time, keep planting those seeds of faith and watch them grow.